Good afternoon and welcome to ICE Webinars, a cool place for hot topics. Today we are joined by Jence Cantu, CEO at Advanced Health Education Centre. ICE Webinars would like to thank today's sponsor, Advanced Health Education Centre. Chartered in 1988, it was created to fulfil continuing education in imaging technology that was unavailable by conventional academic routes. It was a pioneering effort to provide healthcare facilities lacking trained professionals' methods to sponsor staff training. AHEC is agile and adapts to meet the needs of their customers. Their central focus is their clients' needs. They offer variable solutions customized to their facility, be it education, skills training, consulting, or staffing. For more information, visit aheconline.com. Just a reminder that ICE Magazine is headed to ICE 2023 at the Renaissance Nashville Hotel, Tennessee, from February the 17th to the 19th. The Imaging Conference and Expo is the only conference dedicated to imaging directors, radiology administrators, and imaging engineers. ICE offers valuable CE credits from the ASRT and ACI and is a unique community of key decision makers and influential imaging professionals. Registration is open, so for more details, visit attendice.com and come help us celebrate 10 years of ICE. Today's webinar is eligible for one ARRT Category A CE credit by the AHRA. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar, but you must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit. And you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@ndpublishing.com. We'll wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A, so please submit your question anytime using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our brand new ICE gym bags to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. Advanced Health Education Centre is based in Texas. Which popular soda was invented in Waco in Texas? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the answer at the end of the webinar. As I mentioned earlier, Jence Cantu is our presenter today. She will discuss guiding through change impacts on today's imaging workforce. Jence, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Wonderful, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to spend the next hour with you. A little bit about my background. I am a radiologic technologist of over 30 years. I have worked as a tech, as a supervisor, as a specialty tech in the cardiac cath lab, department director, and I've spent the last several years running our healthcare staffing company, Med Relief Staffing. So the current workforce and workforce trends is something that's very important, I believe, to all of us. And so let's get started, shall we? I think we can all agree that in healthcare, the past 3 years, everything, absolutely everything changed. Our world right now is post-pandemic. We've seen the Great Resignation. We're facing the Silver Tsunami and definitely some economic uncertainty. We've all been talking the last several months about high inflation and gas prices. They're going up, they're coming down. The cost of living concerns. Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? If it wasn't stressful enough, even the CDC has come out now and told us that the life expectancy for American citizens has fallen for the 2nd year in a row. It's declined from 77 years to 76.1 over the past year. This is the lowest point since 2016 and the worst 2-year decline for life expectancy since 1923, so 100 years. All right, so no, this doesn't mean we're going to have fewer patients. What it does mean is that the last couple of years have taken a toll on all of us. I will say in this white paper that the CDC wrote that they noted COVID was the #1 reason for the decline. Secondly was unintentional injuries, which was predominantly overdoses, heart disease, liver disease, the standards. And I know what you're thinking. Well, this is a cheery way to start a webinar, isn't it? but realistically, it's just data that supports that there's a lot of pressure on today's healthcare workers. And in the workplace, things are changing. It's not all bad news, but let's dig down a little bit. Let's take a look at some of our objectives, okay? So a few of the things that we're going to talk about in the next 45 to 50 minutes will be examining trends and changes in the overall workforce, such as the Great Resignation, the Silver Tsunami. We're going to discuss trends and changes in a couple of specific modalities. We're going to discuss some of the challenges for both staff and leadership. And when there's challenges, there's always options or opportunities for improvement. And we're going to look at both sides for both technologists and leadership, because it's not just one side or the other. We're all in this together. Now, it wasn't very long ago that images are like this, they were everywhere. Time extended, our patients passed away, and honestly, over the past few years, we saw some of the best and unfortunately the worst in humanity. Our frontline healthcare workers took the brunt of all of this. And our leadership teams, well, they tried to guide us through something that none of us had ever seen before. And it's okay to reflect on times like this for both the good and the bad. As we said when we first started this webinar, I work for Advanced Health. One of the things that we do is we survey our customers quite often. And when COVID started 2020, this survey was late April of 2020. Back in the beginning, it had been going on for a few weeks. And COVID was already starting to change things then. If you notice back then, people were worried about their hours being reduced, being laid off, being furloughed. Then you jump ahead 2 or 3 years to today, and we can say things have definitely changed. This is just a little bit from one of our most recent surveys. If you notice on both sides, things that are such as facilities being short-staffed, lack of training opportunities, lack of new opportunities, were definitely heavy responses in both of them. If you look at the one regarding the department pain points since the pandemic has started to slow, 55% said they were short-staffed and 18% said that they've got open jobs without qualified applicants. That's 73% of the people that responded that are saying biggest pain point right now is the change in the workforce. So let's look at maybe what is changing in the workforce. If we were to ask you guys, what is your biggest challenge? If you want to type it in the box, we'll do a quick gathering of the information and see if it coincides with some of the other surveys that I did when I was researching this. So some of the research boiled down to this. This is both employee and employer challenges that have come out. I don't want to spend too much time on the past because now we all have a new norm, but our current norm does have influences from the past couple of 3 years. I know it's a term that's really overused, but it really is applicable here. Burnout is the biggest one. It comes on many different research surveys, papers, that this is one of the things that employees and employers are both noting as a challenge. It covers many terms such as frustrations, snarkiness, call-outs, people that have just honestly taken a step back. It can be people who are apathetic, exhausted, anxious, cynical. So burnout is a global term for all of these. Some of the other challenges are expectations due to open positions or lack of candidates, a wave in the employment changes and people leaving their positions. They have a whole group that just retired and changed professions. And another area is a lack of appreciation or communication, feeling like they are backed into a corner. There's a lack of opportunities in their current position. All of these are very difficult, and you have to question, how are people dealing with it? Well, one of the first ways was the Great Resignation. It's a term you may have heard. It has been quite publicized over the last few months, and for good reason. The Great Resignation was when the number of resignations across the board reached an all-time high. In 2021, nearly 47 million people left their job voluntarily. This was approximately 3% of the workforce, according to Forbes magazine. Some of the things that also had an impact was the work from home orders, the imbalance between work demands and a lack of resources that had an impact, and people just became tired. We have also had a influx with our Gen Z employees, and their cultural attitude shift has definitely made a difference. It's definitely having an impact. So for those who aren't aware, Gen Z are those who are born after 1997. And this group is going to be fabulous in the next few years. The research with these guys show that they will have a tendency to change jobs a little bit more than previous generations, but they are driven. They have an entrepreneurial spirit. They have a great respect for responsibilities and cultural company cultures. And this group is less motivated by job security, but highly, highly motivated by job satisfaction. And hopefully we will see that job satisfaction in the future will also contribute to higher patient satisfactions. So there's some positives that might be able to come from this. Now, the Great Resignation typically has 5 R's. This came originally from an article by the Harvard Business Review, and these 5 R's are simple. First is retirement. The baby boomers are coming to the retirement age. This definitely has an impact on the number of people and the experience of people that are available in the workforce marketplace. So sorry. Relocation. Think about how crazy the housing market has been in the last year, and now you have the higher interest rates. So people aren't relocating like they had in the past. They're not downsizing and buying the condo in Florida or South Texas. They have just gone through a reconsideration, not only for maybe retiring early or putting off retirement or not selling their home, but thinking about what changes they need to make for their work-life balance. What's important to them? Reshuffling indicates those who just changed industries or professions. They just did a 360 and made a big change. And reluctance for change is either at their current job or possibly due to some of the changes with the recent workforce reallocations. For some, not necessarily in healthcare, but it could be those that don't want to return to the office. They want to continue to work remote. But these are the things that they consider as the building blocks or the catalyst, I should say, for that Great Resignation. Well, the Great Resignation, the 47 million leaving, isn't the only thing, and the pandemic wasn't the only thing that affected today's workforce and the challenges that we're having in today's workforce. We've discussed the Great Resignation, and the next phase after the Great Resignation was called the Silent Resignation. You may have also heard this as quiet quitting. Quiet quitting and the silent resignation does not mean that you're quitting your job. It means that you're pulling back. You're not going above and beyond in your workplace anymore. You're not taking that extra call. You're not pushing to do those extra patients while you're on shift. It is a pulling back just across the board. A common phrase that has come through this, whether you agree with it or not, is I'm acting my wage. This is not a new movement, but it has been brought to the forefront via social media. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And the Gen Z workers help lead the quiet quitting, not only because of the social media, but because they have expressed the need to have a better harmony with a work-life balance. Okay. Now, the pandemic led to exhaustion. We've obviously discussed this a little bit before, and I think all of us either have felt that or know someone who has been affected by it. Currently, in a recent Gallup poll, 18% of workers that were polled noted that they are actively disengaged. And this is the highest it has been. This 18% is the highest percent of disengaged work in the workforce from this Gallup poll in over a decade. Now, some employees feel it is self-protection, and other employees feel it's detrimental to their coworkers and to their patients. So, as we said, this quiet quitting term did become more popular in the last few months. It started off, honestly, as a TikTok video. It is not one that will be easily resolved. It is one that will take good communication for all who are involved. But it's not just quiet quitting. Nope, there's always two sides to every story, right? So if there's quiet quitting, there's also probably quiet firing. They also call it the silent termination. And this is when an employer purposefully treats a worker badly to try to get them to quit. Examples of purposely treating someone terribly could be including assigning them to tasks you know they don't like, or abruptly changing their role, their hours, their job duty assignments. It is a passive-aggressive, in my opinion, poor way to manage poor performers. 80% of the respondents in a recent LinkedIn news poll say they have seen or experienced quiet firing themselves. This one's kind of hard to keep in mind, that not all changes or requests and changes in schedule will be quiet firing. There are times, especially if you work in a hospital, we have a responsibility to our patients, and so the manager, the director, may have to ask you sometimes to cover a shift if somebody called off sick or covering for a vacation. You have to do that in order to be able to meet the patient's needs, but that does not detract that this does sometimes happen. This honestly goes back to employee engagement, communication. There is a responsibility for both the employee and management. And this is a direct reflection, honestly, of a company's culture. So it is something to keep in mind, both quiet quitting and quiet firing. Well, there's a lot of other things that have had effect on today's workforce. We've not just the Great Resignation, the quiet quitting, the quiet firing. Some are just leaving the profession. Remember that reshuffling that we talked about in the 5 R's of the Great Resignation? Well, according to the Motley Fool, one Microsoft survey recently said that up to 46% of American workers are looking to make changes in their profession. They did a survey of those who were part of the Great Resignation and left their profession completely. 20% of those guys said it was directly due to COVID. Some are going back to their profession. Some, the changes are permanent. But it all doesn't revolve around COVID. And so let's look at some of the other things that are directly affecting today's workforce or will have an effect on the workforce in the next couple of 5 years. As I said, the workforce is changing. We've got things like the Silver Tsunami, Gen Z expectations, the salary expectations, that work-life balance. We're going to talk a little bit about that because ironically, it's not exactly what people think of, at least in part. And then the lack of qualified applicants or the open and unfilled positions. If you look at the generational effect on the workforce today, nearly 50% of the workforce is made up of either the baby boomers or Gen Z. One's hitting the retirement age, and for the next few years will be exiting, and the other one is graduating from college, graduating from school, and entering the workforce. A Pew Research survey showed that by 2025, Gen Z will be the largest portion of the workforce. These generations, what motivates them, how they react, quite honestly, are vastly different. And our last slide, we talked about some of the challenges, and one of them was the Silver Tsunami, right? So let's look at that one a little closer. The Silver Tsunami. This refers to the number of people in the baby boomer generation. By 2030, this is going to be 72 million of our population. These 72 million will definitely have an impact on the healthcare needs with an increase in the aging population. They're also going to have an impact with the number of people retiring and leaving the workforce. This is something that we as managers have to plan for within your employee dynamics. All right. According to Pew, 10,000 Americans turn 65 daily. And in 2030, the last of the baby boomers will be 65. All right. All of this means that there is going to be an increase in Medicare cost. With this many people aging and changing their insurance, it's going to change the payer mixes. With age comes an increase in patients with chronic ailments, and we're going to have an increase in people retiring, which is not only the volume but the experience that these wonderful technologists have. This gives us anywhere from 5 to 7 years to plan for the majority of this portion of our workforce to be exiting. And so it definitely needs to be planned, part of your future plans for your departments or with individuals' choices, right? Now, the pandemic actually did throw a wrench in some of the Silver Tsunami. This is not a new term. It's been around for a few years. Remember that 47 million that took part in the Great Resignation in 2021? Well, in the first 6 months or so of that, 1.5 million of those were people taking early retirement. This is according to Forbes. But after that initial leaving, the pandemic or the economic of America today changed the trajectory for several people in that Silver Tsunami. And so like I said, it had an initial impact in the Great Resignation, but as time went along, several chose not to downsize their housing. They instead choose to remain in the workplace and keep their homes, and I love the term age in place. There is a website, apoli.com, that noted that today's Americans between the ages of 65 and 72 are more likely to be working than at any other time before in the history of America. So economic trends, many have delayed their retirement. Now, this has had an impact on the workforce in the past couple of years, but this is one of the things that will have an impact on the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years. Well, what about the other end of the generational spectrum? Well, as I said before, Gen Z is going to have a great impact. In the next few years, they are going to be the largest portion of our workforce. They estimate that by 2030. This group led the quiet quitting. They led the charge for that work-life balance blend being one of the more important factors for their professional lives. They value corporate responsibility, environmental responsibility, the giving back to other members of society. And these guys have an entrepreneurial spirit that we've not seen recently. 14% have their own business or a side gig. They are go-getters. So some of the other impacts that we're seeing these guys, because they are less likely to gravitate to job security versus job satisfaction, they're working PRN instead of full-time and have their job on the side. They will work selective scheduling or be hired to work selective scheduling, like 410s instead of 5/8s. They don't look at regular benefits, but they value other things such as freedoms and leadership that is important to them. And it's important for today's leadership to recognize this and the impact that it's going to have, again, just like the Silver Tsunami, on the next 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years on the imaging workforce. But all of these challenges or changes to the workforce aren't just generational. There are many other influences, and we're going to discuss just a few. Salary expectations. This is one that probably isn't a surprise to people, but there are some interesting tidbits regarding it. We would hope that we didn't get into healthcare just because it is a stable, well-paying job. We hope that many of us got into it to make a difference, but it's a whole lot. It would be remiss if we didn't discuss salary expectations. Okay. There was a recent survey from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. That article was very interesting. That the minimum that the responders would look to accept is $73,000 a year. Now, that is vastly different than the $8.95 I made on my first radiology job, right? Okay, so it was about 157 years ago, but nonetheless, many listed today's high inflation and increased cost of living as a reason for needing such a high salary. 25% of those that were surveyed in this particular survey have been looking for a job for at least the last 4 weeks. And this is the highest rate that is looking for a job since 2014. So let's think about 2014. That was post last recession, but pre-pandemic. So today's economy, the high inflation, the unemployment, inflation is high, but unemployment remains low. We know that is definitely the case here in healthcare, because think about the number of open positions at your locations or that you know about, right? This information was taken from a couple of places, the ASRT salary survey, radiologybusiness.com, but the salary expectations in imaging have definitely increased and changed between 2019 and 2022. The average technologist saw an increase between 8.2 and 11.2%. The average pay for technologists across all modalities throughout the US, taking into consideration that some cost of livings are more expensive in some places than others, but the mean pay is $77,000. In the past 3 years, diagnostic techs had the largest collective pay increase at nearly 13%. They went from $57,800 back in 2019 as an average salary to this year, the average salary is $65,000. CT techs increased 12% from an average of just under $70,000 to now just over $78,000 in 3 years. The top earners in the imaging world were those in medical dosimetry, and they average about $132,000 a year. And if you're wondering where all of these wonderfully high-paying jobs are, well, California pays the highest annual aggregate salary at $114,000 annually, with Washington, D.C. coming in second at $96,000. I will say from these surveys, it was good to note that over half of those technologists that were surveyed are happy with their benefits and their salary programs offered by their facilities. Now, we've talked about work-life balance a little bit, some generational, some with burnout, some just across the board. Work-life balance, or the work-life blend, is defined as the division of one's time and focus between working, family, and leisure activities. I think quite often, many people just think it's, what am I going to do outside? You know, it's us versus them, it's work versus the outside. And that's not really what that blend or balance is about. The inability to find that balance is very, very frustrating to many. It helps to have a purpose or a hobby that will help you reach these levels of fulfillment. Remember, it's not a magic pill. It's not one size fits all. And that purpose should be personal. It could be art or cooking or travel, rescuing dogs. In my case, great shoes and purses, you know. No, you all need something where you can have a purpose to reach fulfillment. The problem is that many don't recognize that if you only focused on your purpose, then you're going to burn out just as if you only focus on your work. It's that blend. Remember, work, family, your leisure activities. WorkLifeBalanceCenter.org recommends that you have a timeline for your purpose. So let's say cooking is your purpose, and you want to learn how to make this magnificent Italian meal, authentic Italian meal. So you set up the classes, and so you maybe set a 3-month and a 6-month, and by the end of the year you can have a feast for your family. But your timeline should be short and long term, just like your professional goals should be short and long term. But the ultimate goal with all of this is finding a joy and an acceptance and a truth and a balance in all aspects of your life. Okay, finding joy, you can't love one aspect and hate the other one. That's not what that balance means. It's your responsibility to yourself. It's your responsibility to your employees, to your employer, to your patients, to your coworkers, and it is also a vital step in that employee engagement that people will be allowed to have that work-life blend. Okay. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, on average, there's about a 24% open rate in imaging across the board. So what does this mean? Well, healthcare occupations are projected to grow 13% in the next 10 years. Part of that is due to technical advances. Part of that is due to the needs to an aging population. Part of that is due to that silver tsunami and the people who are leaving. In radiology, there's currently approximately 16,600 open jobs annually. Again, that's about 24%. Currently, there are just about 223,000 technologists that are employed. Most of us are employed in hospitals or physician practices or outpatient centers. There is hope with this open rate. I've read several articles that the number of applicants to healthcare schools are increasing post-pandemic, people that do want to make a difference. One example I'll give you is the American Association of Nursing Colleges noted that they had an increased student entry level of 3.3% last year. So it may take a couple of years, 3-4 years, but this is an important thing for encouraging people to enter our profession for leadership when they need to be working with the Human Resources Department, the applications, on what the ads say so that they are compelling for people to apply. That the right terms aren't being caught up by the ATS, the applicant tracking systems. You know, we no longer go and fill out your application by hand, either in HR or take your resume down to the director of radiology. Everything goes through an ATS, it's an applicant tracking system. Everything's done online. So making sure that the ATS has wide enough variables that you can see the potential applicants and that they don't get lost in the shuffle. And it's important when it comes to the open positions and opportunities, especially in the advertising and the locations that you're advertising, that you set yourself apart, that you set your team apart to attract different applicants, be it Gen Z, Gen X, somebody who wants to work PRN. There's a lot of opportunities that maybe now we should look at that we might not have looked at in the past to help with some of these open opportunities. Lack of qualified applicants. As we said, we know it's frustrating. The schools are working on it. We are seeing an increase in student applications. However, that will take a couple of years. It was quite often in my research listed as one of the biggest concerns. It was usually top 3 on surveys as to frustrations or what's going on in today's workforce. The lack of qualified applicants definitely adds to both leadership and staff. For staff, it's because they're tired, they're burning out, they want to take a vacation. For leadership, it's, you know, today's managers and directors, they are stuck in the middle quite often. They're trying to meet the expectations of the patients, but they're also trying to meet the employee expectations. And that's a really, can be a cumbersome place to be. And for some of the applicants, it's an economically motivated thing. In the staffing world, you will hear the term that people leave for $1, another $1 an hour. It does happen, unfortunately. That is where that company culture and that reputation and that team employee engagement becomes a factor and becomes an important portion. And guys, there's a big misconception that everyone went to take travel assignments. We run a staffing company. We do have travelers. I'll be transparent with that. We did see an increase during the pandemic, but now the trends that we're seeing is people are settling back into full-time jobs for stability. And the reality is, if you have been in this field for more than 10 years, you know that this is a cyclical thing, that where there's an imbalance of either openings or positions available. So this is one of those things that will probably continue to be a bit of a frustration, but hopefully be able to level out here very soon. All right, quickly, I'm going to go through some of our most recent surveys that we've done here at AHEC. This went to a poll a couple months, not a month and a half ago, give or take. Over 350 technologists responded. 34 states were represented for these answers. If you see, there a large majority were located in a more metropolitan area, but 20% were in a rural area. So that may have an impact on some of these answers, but it's important for you to know. All right, radiology openings by modality. I will tell you that this did not surprise me at all with our staffing company. In the past, ultrasound has always been the go-to. That has been the biggest need for years and years and years and years. The last 3 years, it has definitely flipped. We get more CT requests here with our staffing company, but that RT-CT combo, that is definitely the most requested. MRI is higher now than I think when the survey was out too. This is some of the ways that people's facilities are coping with staffing shortages. As you see, a majority of it is using overtime. You do see some that are increasing their PRN pool or using agency, which does help. But the problem with this is the overtime, after a while, leads to that burnout and people getting frustrated. So other factors that have affected the radiology workforce were people retiring, people burning out, other contributions. 56, almost 57% said that heavy work schedules and burnout. And when we're asked if they were receiving applications, it's pretty much split in thirds to yes, no, or I don't know. I wanted to highlight the CT modality specifically, in part because that RT-CT combo is one of the things that we are seeing that is most requested. But there's a lot going on in CT that in the future will have an impact, okay? Keep in mind that it is now the second most ordered exam in an ED behind the chest x-ray. There are approximately 90 million CT procedures done annually here in the US. Fortune Business reported in April of 2022 that CT scanner sales were up nearly 10% from the previous year. All right, and an interesting fact is that in several states, somewhere between 25 and 30+% of technologists are also CT registered. Okay, why are the CT stats important? Well, it's a direct correlation with some of the modalities that we saw earlier. Technical advances like the portable CT and things that are continually advancing, some of the AI stuff that goes along with CT, the new photon counting CT, this is going to be growth opportunities. And so this particular modality is something that in the future, I believe we will see more challenges for our workforce teams. All right. But this is also an opportunity for employee engagement. We're going to talk about employee engagement a little bit more in the next few slides, but training, employee engagement, training allows professional growth. It gives advancements amongst your team. New challenges help prevent burnout of the team. And it helps improve morale for those who felt like they were cornered or stifled, as you may recall in some of our earlier surveys, okay? Pardon me. What can we do to improve things? Well, this is not a new cartoon, but it kind of fit in today with today's challenges. We all have responsibilities in this, whether we are a frontline technologist or a multi-department director. You'll have responsibilities in either adding or detracting from the workplace. So let's take a look at a few. The atmosphere. Being aware of burnout and willing to address staff that are struggling with potential solutions. Atmosphere is affected by both employees and management. All right. One of the ways that can encourage a good atmosphere is to promote diversity. Encourage those employees to take a PTO or take breaks to help recharge themselves, help them work on that work-life blend. Getting rid of workplace bullies. I know that probably people are going, oh, but so-and-so has been here for 22 years. She doesn't mean it. That she'll do anything, she'll work any shift. Well, if you have a workplace bully or someone with a, if you can see my air quotes here, strong personality, you got to keep in mind that they do more harm than good. There was a recent survey by Statista that showed that the #1 reason for job satisfaction is not having great equipment, although it doesn't hurt. It is their work life. The reason people like to go to work is because they like what they're doing and they like who they're working with. All right. Another one of my favorite things that I found was buy plants, not pizza. We're all tired of pizza parties, especially if you work third shift and you get stuck with the cold leftovers. But there was a study recently done showing a direct correlation between employee morale and plants in the workplace. So green is good, right? Now, there's responsibilities. You have a responsibility to yourself, to your coworkers, to your employer or employees, to your patients, to your loved ones, and responsibility to try to find that work-life blend where there's happiness in all aspects. Responsibility is a direct correlation to that employee engagement. It is a responsibility of management, but it's an equal responsibility of the employee for employee engagement. I know it sounds silly, but wouldn't it be a nicer world if we all went back to that golden rule, that we addressed our own possible burnouts or cynical, terse responses? If we can change our outlook, taking my responsibility for our communications, then think of the strife and other things that could be eliminated. Okay, and everything always boils down to communication, right? I know this is not a surprise. Again, it is a responsibility and importance for both employers and employees. It is a two-way street. And if there's transparent communication, people are in the same vein, hopefully it will eliminate some of the problems that led to that burnout and that frustration. Communication should be open and engaging. When there's a project or in a department, there should be clear objectives and expectations. It should be fair. Part of communication is recognizing staff or your coworkers. Be sincere. Be generous with your praises. 78% of employees that were surveyed in a survey we were talking about just a second ago said that receiving recognition motivates them to do their jobs. Think about that, 78%. When we've all been tired and suffering burnout, that's an easy way to make a difference, isn't it? And keep in mind that when you communicate, not only should it be sincere, it should be transparent, especially if it's a difficult topic, because people, just like you and I, respond to honesty and respect. Education and training. Remember, in some of our surveys, there was a lack of opportunity or growth listed for some of the employee disengagement. And disengagement is higher now than it's been in 10 years. Education and training show the employees that they are valued. And as an employee, it gives me an opportunity to learn a new skill or new things. It can help with that work-life balance. And this can be something such as CT, MRI, or leadership. Think about those who have the possibility or the talent to become a potential supervisor. Which leads us to grooming tomorrow's leaders. It's mentoring, it's coaching. This addresses the lack of growth concerns. It is a direct indication of your company's culture. Working in mentoring prevents future leadership issues. Keep in mind that 75% of employees quit their job due to problems with their supervisors. So if we groom our future supervisors, I've said it before, I'll say it again, hardest job I ever had was that frontline, very first supervisory job. So if we can groom those, think about the impact that will have on the workforce in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. I personally have been very lucky. I've worked with one of the legends here in the world of diagnostic imaging for over 20 years. Through their mentoring, her mentoring, I had the confidence to go back and get my degree, my master's degree. I joke that I've got 3 really pretty pieces of paper that's on my office wall, but realistically, I learned more from her and those practical applications in the time that she spent teaching me and investing in me. And now I get to pay that back with mentoring moments with her current staff. And lastly, one of the things that I would encourage all of us to do, it's an important portion for promoting our profession. It is also an important tool for communications, and that can help solidify our profession, and that in turn, the workforce, is advocacy. Participate, volunteer, whether it is an extracurricular thing, a committee, a fundraiser for the new pediatric wing, or the walk in October for breast cancer, whether it's a professional task, something there in the office. Join your local, state, or national societies. This is when you invest in advocacy, you're investing in yourself and your profession, and in turn, the workforce. So, quick review here, and then we're going to go to the questions. Today, we've discussed changes in the workforce with Great Resignation, the Silver Tsunami, quiet quitting, quiet firing. We discussed challenges such as salary, work-life balance, open positions, and we also discussed some of the opportunities for improving the workforce, employee engagement such as atmosphere, communication, education, mentoring, and advocacy. So now is the time. If you have any questions, please type them in the box. And the next step, while we're waiting on those, is following this, you'll receive an email, like Ms. Linda said. You fill out the survey, and then you'll be able to print your certificate. If you would like additional information or have any specific questions that you didn't get to ask today, this is my email, and I'll be happy to answer those. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Linda.
Great, thank you so much, Jence. That was so interesting. I've got a couple of questions here. You noted that education opportunities are important to employees. How can I expect my other staff to train when they're already burnt out or short-staffed?
That's a good one. That can be tough, no doubt, but it is part of that employee engagement. And it can be reimbursing if they go to a junior college. It can be something like a professional education, like we have here at AHEC, for example. If you're looking for mammography techs, it's we do the 40-hour MQSA, and then they come back and get the 25 exams. But it's also presenting to those employees who are feeling a little overwhelmed that you are trying to not only help employee A gain additional skills, but trying to help the needs and the concerns of employee B to give them some relief going forward.
Okay, another question here was quiet quitting started by social media. Can you please tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, it actually started on TikTok, and if you go down the rabbit hole on TikTok, some of those videos are hilarious. But it started with people who one particular video, and then caught on like any viral thing does, where it is um, basically reiterating why they felt going above and beyond for their company wasn't satisfactory to them anymore, and uh, it took off quickly. Within a matter of months, it was definitely a buzzword. Uh, Again, the power of social media.
Okay, we've got time for one more question here. I always thought work-life balance meant not working so much overtime. It was an interesting discussion. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, it goes back to that blend. Remember, you can't love knitting and want to do it 24/7 and hate work. It's really an equilibrium. It's that balance is the key phrase in that, and it can't be all one or the other. It is, and it's got to be your social, whether it's your family, your friends, finding the enjoyment in work instead of being polar opposites, loving one and hating the other. It's finding the joy and addressing the frustrations so that there is more of a balance and not just an overwhelming negative aspect to one area of your life.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, and it is, have you seen hospitals partnering with schools and funding educator positions at schools?
Yes, actually, ironically, we are working with one large health system right now where they are taking their diagnostic technologist and offering them a program to become mammographers. They go through an interview process, and then they will assist with either their training or reimbursement of their training, and allowing technologists to move into a different modality. And again, that is an important part for your employee engagement, so that people don't feel like they are stifled and stuck in a corner.
Okay, that's great. We have come nearly to the end of our hour, so we will wrap up now. So thank you, Jence, for your time today and such a great and informative presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor to learn more about the services they provide to our industry. So please visit aheconline.com. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is Dr. Pepper. So congratulations to our winner, Jennifer Alexander. Enjoy your gym bag. And a quick reminder, you can attain your certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of this webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 ARRT Category A CE credit by the AHRA, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Visit icewebinars.live for more details of upcoming ICE webinars in 2023 and get your complimentary registration. Thank you once again for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.